And I think the first thing that I noticed in our conversations was the very similarity of things that we talked about, which was kind of rare because I used to meet a lot of people and he obviously himself, and kahin na kahin wo sync bahut mushkil se baithta hai, and he's someone who is extremely creative, takes risks, and someone who I duly look up to from an engineering side. But let me kind of do a basic intro of who he is, right? I think he has spent considerable time in very good companies, very good product culture companies, at least how they are spoken about, right? Which is he spent considerable time in Practo, in Amazon, then significant time in Unacademy, where he became very, very quickly rose to become the director of engineering. And then the most recent role that he was a staff software engineer at Google, which coincidentally, I don't know what he did, but he resigned like some time back, which is like another funny thing. So if you want to ask questions over there, but deep down, I would say that if I have to describe him someone, I think he's the model fit of an engineer that you think of. I think that is what Mr. Arpit Vyani is. So dude, thank you very much for coming in. I think this is super lovely and super honored that I am doing this conversation. Awesome.
What but say thanks so much. Means it.
Cool, yeah. Cool. So what I would want to do is I really want to start this conversation, and I've told you the structure, right? मैं पहले 30 minutes हम बात करेंगे, and after the 30 minutes there will be people who will start asking you questions, right? About, and generally उन्होंने आपकी profile देख ली होगी, तो they will ask you very good questions, I'm assuming, and that at least that's what the last judges said. ठीक है? तो fair enough. तो मैं सबसे पहले यार एक बहुत ही interesting चीज बताना चाहता हूँ, क्योंकि ये सारे लोग product manager बनना चाहते हैं. One of the very interesting thing that I always thought of was that what is the mindset of an ideal engineer, and how does he contribute to this? A person coming giving very abstract requirements saying ये बनाना है, but doesn't understand the integrities of a tech system, how it gets built, right? तो वो ideal mindset क्या होता है कि जहाँ पे ये collaboration बहुत अच्छे से काम करती है. And since you have worked in like different culture companies, what is that? तो what is that? कहते हैं ना 10x engineer, वो क्या होता है 10x engineer? थोड़ा वो समझाओ कि ये वो उसका माइंड, वो mindset में different होता है, skill में different होता है, different होता है. I would just want to hear that out.
Okay, so few things. A lot of people, when they hear the term engineer or engineering, they always gravitate towards a one-line answer saying it's basically a person who solves a problem, right? And that is the most common definition that we all hear. But I want to add some more points to that. That I don't believe engineer is someone who simply solves a problem. Obviously, that is the core thing that he or she should focus on, solving a problem. But it's about solving a problem no matter what, right? Irrespective of the circumstances, you somehow find a way. And in our normal, usual language, we call it, even if it requires a jugaad, we would do that, right? But we go a stretch deeper and say it's given a problem, solve it no matter what under some constraints. For example, with respect to constraints, it could be around cost. That, hey, I would want to solve this problem. I would want to build this product with bare minimum cost. I would want to build this product with which gives really high user experience. Or I would want to build this product that responds very quickly. So these could be some of the constraints that engineers, that especially a 10x engineer keeps in mind. A normal engineer would be more like hands who simply executes, but a 10x engineer looks beyond it and says that, hey, given a problem, I would want to solve it no matter what kind of hacks I would want to put in under some constraint. But I would go a stretch further and say no matter what, under some constraint, but in a structured fashion such that I would be able to reuse the solution. And that is where the magic happens. The person who simply solves a problem, that's one point. Because what if you solve a problem and that is not a reusable solution? Then har baar naya solve karna padega, right? What if you solve a problem saying that, hey, bahut sahi jugaad hai, main maar deta hu, but what if the code is not extensible? What if you're not getting the desired performance? You say that it's working in my machine but not in production, right? Constraints are important, right? And taking a stretch further, it needs to be a reusable solution. Now, the one who operates with this mindset is, according to me, is a 10x engineer, because the person is not just thinking of problem diya solution nikala hai, but is also thinking of business, product, and engineering, right? And that is a deadly combo. And that, according to me, is a 10x engineer who looks at it from a holistic view and solves a problem such that the solution can be repetitively used under the constraints, no matter what. That's a mind.
Awesome. Amazing. So I think a very good thing that you spoke about, and I think as product managers, we've also instilled that fact that even before you jump into the solution, you do the discovery, right? And what I mean by discovery is discovery from all lenses, right? Not from a user's lens, but from a business economic sense, from maybe multiple lenses, and that is what we have done. But I think मैं एक और चीज जानना चाहता हूँ, वो भी थोड़ा culture और relationship के point of view से, कि ये how does, if you have to define that what should be an ideal relationship between a product manager and engineer, how should that work? वो कैसे काम करता है? और और मतलब ये कोलैबोरेशन, शायद मेरा क्वेश्चन थोड़ा
I totally get it. I totally get it.
तो कैसे, क्योंकि ये सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम होती है। मैं एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देता हूँ डूड, कि अपनी जगह पता प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है। प्रॉब्लम ये रहती है कि अगर मैं एक इंजीनियर के पास जाऊं और इंजीनियर को कुछ बोलूं कि भाई मुझे ये फीचर बनाना है, a lot of times the product lens of it is that how do I believe if the engineering saying something that complex or not, how do I build that trust यार कि ये कैसे होगा, और तभी मिसट्रस्ट क्रिएट होता है कि नहीं यार हो सकता है मैं इसके पास जाऊं और हो सकता है, और इंजीनियर बोलता है रिक्वायरमेंट क्लियर नहीं है, तो वो कैसे काम करेगा। आई जस्ट वांट टू हियर योर व्यूज ऑन दैट।
सबसे पहला, we need to understand and establish that both are in the same team. Both are working towards the same mission. Now the biggest problem is it's not that engineer is at a slightly above pedestal than a PM and vice versa, right? But an engineer needs to tone down the technical side of things while explaining, while the PM needs to chop down the jargon. And both of them needs to understand this, right? Because not every engineer would understand jargon. For example, when during my first interaction with the PM, I just graduated out of my master's, and first interaction with PM सीधा क्या है, LTV, this, that, नहीं पता, right? Now, this is where empathy comes in. Again, it's not empathy towards the user. Obviously, that is important to build great products. But again, within the team itself, you need to understand that you need to be empathetic towards who is doing what, how those things are being, how are you actually communicating, right? Now, that is something that we need to understand, that both the parties need to talk down, and that's where the magic happens. First. Second is there needs to be, what I have personally believed is there needs to be a bond. Like when I was working at Unacademy, I used to hang out with PMs more than engineers because I had to understand those requirements really well. And when we gelled up together, even if it requires slightly higher effort from their end or my end, we are willing to go a stretch above and beyond, right? So we handled search, and the PM of search is what I used to work with every single day, and we built a camaraderie, and that really helps. Like people typically think of it as a professional relationship, but if you go slightly, and I'm not saying be best friends with that person, but slightly more on human level, even if you mess up, but you would be willing to go that above and beyond part and explain it one more time, or him or her explaining you one more time. So, which is what I believe. And although I've seen that big organizations, a purely professional relationship works pretty well, but that is a very process-driven organization, typically a FANG type stuff where everything happens on a dock. But in a startup or maybe in a high-paced environment, that might not always be the case because docs typically slow you down. Right? So yeah, that's my take on that.
Awesome, यार. And यार इसी पे ना मतलब मैं एक और चीज पूछना चाहता हूँ कि the way you have grown as a person, a lot of people when retrospectively look at things, and I'm slightly shifting the conversation to a different, is that retrospectively ना लोगों को काफी बार ये लगता है कि शायद मैं इतना कि मेरी जो काबिलियत आई वो मतलब उसको मैं किसी तरह कनेक्ट कर लेता हूँ, लेकिन जब वो प्रिपेयर कर रहा होता है ना, जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ सम goes into a PM interview or a SDE interview and gets brutally rejected, right? A lot of time the person loses motivation, probably thinks that what the external opinion is. How do you keep yourself resilient? Because you have grown from companies which are ठीक है, अच्छी companies है, but then to best companies, and then at least according to people's lens, I would say लोगों के लेंस से, और आपने वो जंप किया और साथ में आप फिर एक चॉइस और भी बनाया और आपने गूगल भी छोड़ दी। और तो क्या मन में ये कैसे ये सेल्फ वर्थ वाला जो वो फील होता है कि आई एम गुड, बट व्हाट इज गुड इवन मीन, राइट? कि क्या लोग बोल रहे हैं तुम अच्छे हो, या तुम्हें किसी तरीके से तुम्हारे पास कोई एंकर पॉइंट होता है जिससे तुम जानते हो कि यार कि आई कैन टेक रिस्की डिसीजंस नाउ एंड आई कैन थिंक अबाउट इट बिकॉज आई हैव काइंड ऑफ बिलीफ सिस्टम इन माय। क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोगों की पता दिक्कत क्या होती है, दे डोंट लीव अ बैड कल्चर टिल दे फाइंड अनदर रोल, एंड दैट इज समटाइम्स मोर ब्रूटल देन द एक्चुअल सिनेरियो। तो मैं बस जानना चाहता हूँ कि हाउ डू यू build resilience in the face of adversity? That is something that I want to understand. Yeah.
So imposter syndrome is real. When you work with smart people, you will have imposter syndrome. You will think कि सही जगह पर नहीं हूँ, इतना आता नहीं है, and that is a good part and the bad part depending on how you take it. Right? There is no one way to look at it कि नहीं ये मतलब अर्पित ने बोला अच्छा है तो नहीं अभी imposter syndrome सही है, and मतलब always challenge yourself. Some people are not good at taking pressure. So first of all, what I believe is you need to know what kind of person you are. For example, I can take pressure and I can thrive in an ambiguous environment. That's my superpower. And I know a lot of great engineers who are not good at doing it. But this does not mean कि उनका career अच्छा नहीं है. Right? एडवर्सिटीज की डेफिनेशन सबके लिए अलग अलग होती है, या फिर सबका टॉलरेंस लेवल टू एडवर्सिटी अलग होता है, राइट? सो one thing that I always understood is whenever I faced imposter syndrome at workplace interviews या जो भी कुछ होता है या कुछ खराब हुआ, one thing I realized that मतलब it's basically a common fact कि हम लोग नेगेटिव चीज को 3x more weight देता है as compared to anything positive that happens to us, right? So during that time, one thing that I always ensure is I don't lose my self belief. अगर मेरा self belief जा रहा है, अगर मेरा खुद पे से confidence जा रहा है, then it is almost near permanent damage. मैं वो नहीं होने देता हूँ मेरे साथ. At any given point in time when I feel कि मेरा permanent damage हो सकता है या मेरा self belief बहुत affect होने वाला है इससे, I simply take a step back. Be it a project, be it a team, be it an organization, right? Or be it even an interview. So I actually left an interview midway because of this very reason. Because although the question was easy, and it was like 7 years back, the question was really easy, and I knew कि मैं नहीं solve कर पाऊंगा ये because I panicked. But then, and again, I knew कि अगर वो कंपनी जाती भी है तो I would be appearing for other companies as well. तो I chose to leave that interview midway because I knew कि अगर मैं जाऊंगा, उसने कुछ बोला कि अरे इतना easy था, तो मतलब one sentence from them कि इतना easy था और तू नहीं कर पाया, it would damage my self belief. I know I would be able to do it. It's just that due to some reason I was not able to do it at that moment. And सबके लाइफ में आता है, मतलब you may be the best engineer out there, लेकिन एक मोमेंट ऑफ वीकनेस होता है कि तुम नहीं कर पाते हो, मतलब वो चिंदी क्वेश्चन होता है फिर भी नहीं हो पाता, राइट? एंड एट दैट टाइम आई टिपिकली फाइट वर्सेस फ्लाइट इन द टाइम ऑफ लाइक जब मुझे पता है कि मेरा सेल्फ बिलीफ अफेक्ट होगा, आई एम नॉट स्कैर्ड ऑफ चैलेंजेस, आई एम स्कैर्ड कि मेरा सेल्फ बिलीफ नहीं हटना चाहिए बिकॉज द ओनली थिंग दैट आई हैव इज द कॉन्फिडेंस, क्योंकि वो नहीं रहा. एंड अगेन वेरी स्लिम लाइन बिटवीन कॉन्फिडेंस एंड ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस, सो यू नीड टू नो योर स्ट्रेंथ्स एंड लिमिटेशंस. बट इफ आई नो दैट माय सेल्फ इमेज विल बी हैम्पर्ड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस, आई टेक अ स्टेप बैक कि यार एक्सेप्ट कर लो कि नहीं हो पाएगा, दैट इज परफेक्टली फाइन. तो ताकि यू डोंट हैव अ परमानेंट स्कार, अरे यार ऐसा हो गया. So that's one thing that I typically do. So in case of adversities, this is what I do. And so self-belief, and which is what made me leave Google and basically start a company, because I knew that I am operating in my zone of strength, which is to take product from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10. Right? I knew because the following that I built will help me gain initial traction on the product. So I am always, although it's a massive challenge, but the key thing is that because of the self-belief that I have, I know that I'm not going to, like, it's still not an extremely risky bet. I'm still operating out of my strength. And that is, again, it all boils down to having that high self-belief, be it in adversity or in a very high challenging situation or whatever it could be. So I ensure that basically doesn't happen.